Rubio made his government's case against South Africa in an article titled "America Welcomes a New G20", in which he argued that South Africa's economy had stagnated under a burdensome regulatory regime driven by racial grievance, and that it fell firmly outside of the group of 20 largest industrialized economies. He accused the ANC-led government of seeking to scapegoat its own citizens and the United States, describing a government intent on enriching itself while the country's economy limped along, and while South Africans were subjected to violence, discrimination and land confiscation without compensation. The article further claims that South Africa's G20 presidency was an exercise in spite, division and radical agendas. Despite the broad consensus witnessed at the Johannesburg summit, which the United States boycotted despite a late attempt to participate in the handover ceremony, which South Africa rejected on the grounds that it was a breach of protocol at a leaders' event.
We, South Africa, a fully fledged member of the G20, and we have held a very successful G20, and this is not only being said by us, it is said by many, many other people around the world, and saying that South Africa's presidency of the G20 was a very successful G20 process, and the declaration that was adopted is also a forward-looking declaration which will help to lead to many changes around the issues that we identified. So as South Africa, we can know for ourselves as a country that we held a successful G20. What happens going forward are matters that we will deal with.
Further, Minister Lamola wrote a detailed response to Secretary Rubio in which he argued that South Africa's G20 presidency was built on a simple belief that treating Africa and the Global South as equal partners and honestly addressing the systemic macroeconomic issues that impede growth was not an act of charity, but a strategic imperative for a stable and prosperous world. South Africa was now governed by a 10-party government of national unity, in which he argued that the country's democratic journey was an immense task, seeking to dismantle the entrenched architecture of over 300 years of colonialism and apartheid. He also rejected Rubio's framing of the country's land program, which he said was based on a market-based principle while securing property rights, explaining that transformation was a constitutional imperative, views echoed by President Ramaphosa.
All we want really as South Africa is to be treated as an equal sovereign country, a country that respects other countries, a country that fosters the success and prosperity of other countries. That's who we are. We wish no country ill in the world, and in fact, as a country, we don't have enemies, we just have friends. And we want to advance the friendship relationships with all countries in the world. And that is our stance.
Lamola warned that the world was growing weary of double standards and tired of lectures on democracy from those who seem to have forgotten that democracy at its best must listen as much as it speaks. That South Africa remained open to dialogue, committed to maintaining their overall relations with the United States. But it's an open question as to how the other members of the G20 would respond to concerted attempts to exclude South Africa, where Pretoria was expected to play a key role as part of the Troika, which includes the United States and future President the United Kingdom, in guiding the work of the group. As the government-to-government relationship reaches a new low over persistent U.S. falsehoods of a state-sanctioned campaign to persecute the country's white minority. Presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya earlier told SABC News that South Africa would not beg to be included in the G20 deliberations under the U.S. presidency, but would continue to engage other G20 member states to take forward decisions agreed at the Johannesburg summit while pushing back against the magazation of multilateral platforms. Sherman Bryce, SABC News, New York.